Breaking free, the invisible grip of trauma. Welcome to our channel. Today, we're diving deep into how unhealed trauma can shape your life in ways you might not even realize. We often think of trauma as a distant event, something that happened in the past. But the truth is, if it's not addressed, it lives on within us, driving our choices and shaping our relationships in ways we may not even recognize. Stick around to learn about the patterns that keep you stuck and how to break free from them. This video is about understanding those invisible chains and finding the keys to unlock a future free from the shadows of the past. Stuck in the groove. The repetition of familiar experiences. People often repeat painful patterns in relationships and life choices, drawn to the familiar even when unhealthy. It's not about willpower or bad choices. It's about repetition compulsion. Like a child burned by a hot stove, the experience is terrifying and painful. Yet there's a desire to touch it again, to control the situation, and avoid pain. This drives repetition compulsion. The unconscious desire to rewrite the ending, to gain mastery over past experiences, dating emotionally unavailable partners, ending up in undervalued jobs, or recreating dysfunctional dynamics. It's about awareness, not blame. Recognizing repetition compulsion is the first step to breaking free, and that recognition, my friends, is the first step towards breaking free. The comfort of chaos. Mistaking familiarity for safety. We are creatures of habit, drawn to the known. Think about it, your favorite coffee shop, that comfy spot on the couch, the familiar rhythm of your daily routine. Familiarity breeds a sense of comfort, a feeling of being grounded. But here's the thing about the brain, it doesn't always distinguish between familiar and safe, especially when it comes to trauma. When we've experienced early trauma, our brains may learn to associate chaos, dysfunction, or even abuse with a sense of normalcy. Why? Because that was the landscape of our childhood, the environment where our brains first learned about connection and attachment. And as distorted as it may seem, that familiarity, even if it's rooted in pain, can feel safer than the unknown. So, we might find ourselves drawn to partners who are emotionally volatile, relationships that mirror the turbulence of our upbringing. Or we might stay in jobs that are stressful and demeaning because that's what feels familiar. We mistake the adrenaline rush of chaos for the comfort of connection. This is a powerful distortion, and it's essential to understand that your brain is not trying to sabotage you. It's trying to protect you, to keep you within the realm of what it perceives as familiar, even if that familiarity is harmful. The key is to learn to differentiate between true safety and the illusion of safety that comes with familiarity. True safety is about being seen, heard, and respected. It's about feeling secure enough to be vulnerable, to express your needs without fear of judgment or rejection. Drawing the line. Trauma and the struggle with boundaries. Let's talk about boundaries. Not the kind you draw on a map, but the invisible lines we establish to protect our emotional and physical well-being. Boundaries are essential for healthy relationships, self-respect, and overall mental health. But trauma can make it incredibly difficult to set and maintain those boundaries. Think about it. If you grew up in a chaotic or abusive environment, boundaries might have been non-existent or inconsistently enforced. You might have learned that your needs were not important, that speaking up led to punishment, or that your boundaries were constantly violated. This early experience can have a lasting impact on our ability to establish healthy boundaries in adulthood. We might struggle to say no, overgive to please others, or tolerate disrespectful behavior for fear of rocking the boat. The thing is, without clear boundaries, we become vulnerable to exploitation, resentment, and burnout. We give and give until there's nothing left, leaving us feeling depleted and emotionally exhausted. Healing from trauma requires us to rebuild our relationship with boundaries. It's about recognizing that you have a right to your own thoughts, feelings, and needs. It's about learning to say no without guilt and setting limits that protect your well-being. This is not selfish, it's self-preservation. It's about reclaiming your power and creating a life where your needs are valued and respected. Chapter 4. Imagine walking through the world with your senses on high alert, constantly scanning for danger, bracing yourself for the next shoe to drop. This is the reality for many people living with unhealed trauma. It's called hypervigilance, and it's the brain's way of trying to protect you from further harm. When we've experienced trauma, our nervous system gets stuck in fight, flight, or freeze mode. We become hyper-aware of potential threats, misinterpreting neutral cues as dangerous, and struggling to relax and trust. This hypervigilance can show up in our relationships as well. We might find ourselves constantly on guard, questioning motives, and expecting the worst from others. We might struggle to believe that someone could genuinely care for us, fearing that they will eventually hurt or abandon us. This is not about being difficult or paranoid, it's about recognizing that your brain is doing its best to keep you safe based on past experiences. However, this constant state of alert can be incredibly draining and can prevent us from forming healthy, trusting relationships. Healing from trauma involves learning to regulate your nervous system and challenge those hypervigilant responses. It's about recognizing that not everyone is out to hurt you, and that it's safe to let your guard down, little by little. It's about learning to differentiate between real threats and perceived threats, allowing yourself to experience genuine connection without the weight of constant fear. Chapter 5. Silencing the inner critic, trauma, shame, and self-worth. Trauma often leaves deep, invisible scars on our sense of self. We might carry around feelings of shame, worthlessness, or a belief that we are somehow broken or unlovable. This negative self-talk, this inner critic, can be incredibly powerful and damaging. When we've experienced trauma, our brains often internalize the blame and shame, even if we were not at fault. We might tell ourselves, I should have known better, it's my fault, or I'm not good enough. This negative self-talk can become a self-fulfilling prophecy, leading us to make choices that confirm our worst fears about ourselves. We might sabotage relationships, settle for less than we deserve, or isolate ourselves from others. Healing from trauma involves confronting and challenging that inner critic. It's about recognizing that you are worthy of love, respect, and happiness, regardless of your past experiences. It's about learning to treat yourself with the same compassion and understanding that you would offer a dear friend. This is a process, and it takes time and practice. But as you begin to challenge those negative beliefs and replace them with self-compassion, you'll find that your relationships and your life will begin to transform. Chapter 6. The Illusion of Control, Trauma and Maladaptive Coping Strategies. We all develop coping mechanisms to navigate the challenges of life, but when it comes to trauma, those coping mechanisms can sometimes become maladaptive, meaning they end up causing more harm than good in the long run. Think about it. If you grew up in a chaotic or unpredictable environment, you might have learned to control your surroundings as a way to feel safe. This could manifest as perfectionism, overworking, or a need to be in control of every situation. While these strategies might have provided a sense of control in the short term, they can ultimately prevent us from experiencing true intimacy and connection. We might push people away, avoid vulnerability, or become so consumed with work that we neglect our own needs and the needs of those around us. Other maladaptive coping mechanisms might involve numbing or escaping from our emotions. This could look like substance abuse, disordered eating, or excessive spending. Again, while these behaviors might offer temporary relief, they ultimately keep us stuck in the cycle of trauma. Healing requires us to identify and challenge these maladaptive coping mechanisms. It's about learning healthier ways to manage stress, regulate our emotions, and build resilience. It's about recognizing that true strength lies in vulnerability and connection, not in control and isolation. Chapter 7. Rewiring the Brain, the Physiological Impact of Trauma. Trauma isn't just an emotional experience, it's a physical one as well. When we experience trauma, it actually changes the structure and function of our brains, particularly in areas like the amygdala, hippocampus, and prefrontal cortex. These changes can have a profound impact on our emotional regulation, our stress response, and our ability to form healthy relationships. Let's break it down. The amygdala, our brain's fear center, becomes hyperactive, constantly scanning for danger and triggering our fight, flight, or freeze response, even when there's no real threat. The hippocampus, responsible for memory and learning, can have difficulty distinguishing between past and present threats, leading to flashbacks and intrusive thoughts. And the prefrontal cortex, responsible for rational thought and decision-making, can become overwhelmed and less effective at regulating our emotional responses. These physiological changes can make it incredibly challenging to break free from trauma's grip. We might feel like we're constantly on edge, triggered by seemingly insignificant events, or stuck in a loop of negative thoughts and emotions. But here's the good news: the brain is incredibly adaptable, even after trauma. Through therapy, mindfulness practices, and other healing modalities, we can actually rewire those neural pathways and create new patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Your journey to healing starts now. Thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like and subscribe for more content like this. Remember, healing is a journey, and you're not alone. Taking the first step towards understanding and addressing your trauma is a courageous act of self-love. It's about reclaiming your power, rewriting your story, and creating a future free from the shadows of the past.